I don't eat any carbohydrates, and I haven't for 9 whole months. Yet this is the best I've felt in my entire life. And so in this video, I want to share with you what it's like to eat absolutely zero carbohydrates, to just share with you my own personal experience, both the benefits and the downsides, because I think the benefits vastly outweigh the potential downsides that you could face. And I want to kind of spread this and recommend it to more people so maybe they can try it out and experience the same benefits that I have as well. If you don't know me, my name is Keegan and I talk about like diet and fitness and stuff. And so if you want to get behind that, then make sure to go subscribe and do all the YouTube stuff as we go about this video. But I think I should preface this with just kind of the transition phase of getting to absolutely zero carbohydrates. Because in my journey to this diet of eating absolutely zero carbs, I eat just protein and fat now. It was a transition, I'll be completely honest. I didn't go from eating like 300 grams of carbs to zero. I think that would have been a lot harder and a lot more of a shock to my system. What I ended up doing is it was more of a transition out of eating carbs. I started eating less and less as time went on. In kind of like mid 2023 is whenever I first started this transition. I started eating more fat because I wanted to like boost my testosterone and whatnot. So I started eating more eggs, and just as a natural byproduct, I just started eating less carbs. And so my carbs, just slowly decreased and decreased over time until it got to a point where it's like, okay, I want to try this of just completely cutting them out because I feel great as I'm removing them. So let's try removing them completely altogether. And so I started at around 100 grams or so was where I just completely just cut them all out completely. So if you're thinking about doing this and you're like, oh yeah, like I want to cut out all carbohydrates, I suggest definitely doing kind of like a tapering down and just slowly ramping everything up on the other side of that. Because if you just like completely cold turkey, your body probably isn't going to be like super used to it. Because in those first 2 weeks where you cut out carbohydrates, what I experienced was these like crazy, like weird sugar cravings. My body was just like, what are you doing? Like, you're not giving me sugar anymore. And so it had to just go through kind of a transition phase to get more fat adapted and, get out of the carb addiction phase. So I would say that's kind of the downside. That's kind of the downside of eating zero carbs is whenever you're starting, it's a really weird transition. Like your hydration is a little bit different. Like you have to honestly just drink more water. But I mean, you probably should be drinking more water anyways. um, it's a transition, right? And those first few weeks can be kind of difficult. I'm reading this book called Endure by Alex Hutchison, and he's talking about these endurance athletes kind of switching to a more ketogenic approach, and like in these studies, and it's just talking about how they would bunk earlier, they would have like poorer times because they're transitioning on systems, they're not fat adapted yet, so they're not really getting all the benefits that they can be just because they're in that kind of like that sucky middle phase where they're transitioning between energy systems. And so I would say that's honestly the biggest downside is just the transition. It takes a little bit longer than you'll probably think. But honestly, in my experience, those 2 weeks, it wasn't that bad. It just felt different. I wouldn't say I like crashed or I had like super low energy. I just felt different. And then after those 2 weeks of cutting out carbs completely, it normalized and we were all good. I think it just takes a little bit for your body to adapt, basically. Um, but yeah, but after that point is where I started experiencing more of the upsides of that. And even within that transition phase is where I started experiencing more of the benefits of a zero carb diet. And so the benefits that I've experienced is more mental clarity. My energy is way more consistent. You know how I said it was different, right, in that transition phase? That's because it was more consistent. It wasn't like this high and then low and then high and then low. It's just kind of this like even keel flow instead of this kind of like radical up and down that I was used to. And so my body, like I was just, it just felt different. Like that's why I'm not saying it's like a bad thing. It just feels awkward because you're not used to it. And I guess this is another downside that I've experienced is this like consistent mental clarity, this consistent energy. Just I just feel like more alive, if that makes sense. More just vital, like what's the word? It's just more vital, like more alive. I feel more healthy, if that makes sense. It's just I feel way better as a human being than I did back whenever I was eating carbohydrates. And the reason why I kind of preface that with a downside is because I'd been living my entire life up until that point, in this like weird energy, like, spike and drop, blood sugar high, and the insulin crashes it back down, like just all over the place for most of my life. And now I'm to the point to where it's just very consistent. And that is what that's what I kind of say is a downside is that I wish I had tried it sooner. Honestly, that's a regret because I learned about it about like 5 or 6 months earlier, and I had it, and I had tried it for like maybe a couple days, but that's not enough time to, experience the fat adaptation and the real transition. I had heard about it, but I didn't even, give it the full college try. And I regret not doing that sooner because I think I would have felt a lot better a lot sooner, and just life would have been better sooner, if that makes sense. So if you're hearing about this now and you're interested in trying it, then try it out. Like honestly, like like implement it into your life. Do what it takes and just try it for like 30 days and see how you feel. Because, I don't think you're going to regret, trying something for 30 days. And if it's not for you, then just go back to what you were doing before. Like I'm not going to try and like indoctrinate you and try and make you feel bad if you try it and you follow the guidelines, you you actually don't cheat on your diet, you stay, zero carbs, you eat lots of, good quality foods, and you don't have like whack keto bread or something, right? Um, as long as you follow just general eating healthy guidelines, right? But you just cut out the carbohydrates. I think that, like you gave it the college try. And if it doesn't work for you and you don't really enjoy it, like, okay, cool. That's up for you though. But I would really encourage you to at least try it for 30 days just to see what it's like. Because I can tell you my experience, right, to give you a little bit more context. But the best experiment that you can listen to isn't some study that you found on like PubMed or whatever. It's the study of your own life. And that's why I'm sharing this, is because I didn't look at any studies before doing this. I just tried it and I stuck with it because I liked the way that I felt. And yeah, but beyond like the mental clarity and the energy and stuff like that, a couple more benefits is just how my eating habits have changed. So I used to be kind of like a chronic grazer. You might relate to this. Is just where you eat something, you eat like dinner or whatever, and then like, like an hour later, you're back looking in the pantry looking to eat. And I still have this habit because I've ingrained it throughout my entire life of just like if I'm bored, look in the pantry, grab something to nibble on. But that happens much less often now because of, habit change, but also my satiety signals are where they should be now. I don't have this like weird compulsion to constantly eat more food like I used to whenever I was eating carbs and sugar. Now, I get it with like processed food and like candy and like cookies and stuff. That makes sense where it's okay, you have one cookie. Well, you're probably not going to just have one cookie unless you're, pretty good at willpower. I I remember many times where I said, "Oh, I'll have one cookie." and then like 20 minutes later, half the cookie jar is gone, right? That happens, and it makes sense because it's ultra processed food, but there's also sugar in there, right? But I also found myself doing that with stuff like fruit and potatoes and rice and, these things that people consider healthy carbs. And just like my hunger signals didn't make any sense to me. It was just like I'm starving, but I've already eaten, 2,500 calories for the day. Like I'm not a huge guy, so I'm not eating, a crap ton of food every single day. But now it's like I eat how much my body needs, right? So around like 2,000-ish, maybe 2,500 if I've had like a good workout that day, right? I eat somewhere around there. Right? I don't really track my food religiously. I eat somewhere around there and then I'm good. Like I don't have any cravings, any hunger. I can actually go for many, many hours without even like thinking about food or being hungry at all. Just as long as I'm like drinking water. And it's kind of like a weight off my shoulders now that I don't have that constant like hunger, I guess pang, but also that constant hunger signal telling you like have food, or just kind of like that drug like compulsion after I've done eating. I'm like full. I don't have that compulsion to be like more, have more, because that was a problem that I always came across whenever I was eating carbs. It's just I'd be kind of full, but I would have this weird compulsion to keep shoveling food in my mouth, even though my stomach's like, bro, you're good. You don't need to eat any more food. But my brain was telling me like, have more, eat more now. Like it was just it was just such a weird time in my life, and I'm glad that I've gotten past that. But yeah, the hunger signals are all regular now. The My energy is stable. I have mental clarity. I would say those are the biggest upsides that I have felt whenever I've eaten zero carbs. That's what it's like eating zero carbs. Now, I already kind of mentioned some of the downsides, transition. I wish I did it sooner. A couple of the other downsides when you're eating zero carbs, because I want to give you the full picture of what it's like. People will question you, okay? Like I talk about it and people are like, "Oh my gosh, like no carbs? Oh my gosh, your thyroid is going to fall, like you're going to lose all of your hair and you're going to die. Oh my god." Like people overreact all the time. They're like, "But glucose is your main energy source." And it's just like they're pulling that from high school biology. And I understand that because like I I'm in high school right now, dude. I'm 17. I went through high school biology. I've had like 3 biology classes so far, and every single one they say, "Oh, carbohydrates are the main energy source," and they never talk about that you can run on fat for fuel. You can, right? And you don't get all of the other downsides that come with carbs, like the sugar highs and crashes. You don't get the freaking insulin spike. So, yeah, it's like you can run on other energy sources, basically, like ketones, um, and fatty acids. But it's just people are like confused by it because it's not like a mainstream thing. Not a lot. I mean, some people do like keto and stuff, right? But you know, in the general context, 90% of people eat carbs. And so whenever you don't eat carbs, people are kind of confused by it. Especially also if you do any like athletic activities, like even if you like lift or you run, people are like, "You don't eat carbs? What? You're gonna be a bad athlete?" No, like, it's not how it works, bro. Like if you train, you're gonna be a better athlete. It doesn't really matter your fueling strategy. It's really more of like, are you doing the training? In my experience, it's more of like training over what you're eating. Um, but yeah, just people will question you, and like you're just gonna have to deal with it. And just be aware, like there's carbs everywhere. If you want to truly eat like a zero carb diet, just be aware that there's carbs everywhere. Like they sneak them into absolutely everything. Um, I was I've been on this journey and just trying to eat like zero carbs, right? And I would be eating stuff like sausage and bratwurst and maybe even bacon, right? But those things, they're cured with sugar. They're like sugar is added in, like blended into that mix. And so just be aware of that if you're trying to be on this journey is because like it's everywhere. It's like prolific. It's deeply entrenched basically everywhere. So if you want to have truly zero carbs, just be aware of that and know what you're eating basically. And the final, I guess, downside is the food isn't as stimulating. So I think there's an important distinction to make though, is that the food that the most people eat is super delicious, super tasty, super stimulating, and it's because our brains like that, and our brains are like, yes, have more, and because we're freaking monkeys that want to hit the dopamine button constantly. But that's not what's best for us, right? It's not what's best for our health, right? Like you can imagine hitting the dopamine button on something like a drug or whatever probably isn't a great idea. But that's the same thing with like carbs and sugar, from my understanding. And so it's not as stimulating, right? You don't get the dopamine hit all of the time, but it still tastes good, right? The food is still, I mean, still somewhat stimulating, it still tastes great, but it's just not as stimulating. It's not like fun food, if that makes sense. Most fun foods are the stuff that are like kind of bad for you or really bad for you, like the cookies, the cake, the ice cream, etc., etc., etc. I think you get what I mean. But I hope that encapsulates just kind of what it's like eating zero carbs, at least the downsides, and I hope I encapsulated the benefits as well. That's what I've experienced. I'm sure other people have experienced other things, but that's just kind of my experience wrapped up into this video. Is I feel way better, but there are a couple of downsides. But honestly, in my kind of scaling of weighing these things, the upsides are way better because my objective reality is so much better than it was before. I have way more energy. Like I said, the hunger signals are actually where they should be. Mental clarity, energy. It's just a lot better experience of life. And that's why I want to encourage you to try it for 30 days. Just give it a shot. See how you do. If you need help with that, I'm building a course on how you can like stick to a low carb or no carb diet for 30 days. So if you're coming to this video a little bit later and the course is done, it should be in the description. If that sounds like, if you want assistance with sticking to it and having accountability for a full 30 days. But yeah, that's what I got. If you like what I'm saying, make sure you go subscribe. Go check out the links in the description. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.